Invasion Season 2, Episode 10, the finale is out. Old Friends, New Frontiers. We're here to talk about it. I've seen all 2 seasons. You've seen just this episode. I'm very interested, as someone who's just jumped into this show, what you thought.
Well, I was hoping to get from the finale some aliens. That's all I wanted to see.
So you knew this was an alien show?
Yeah, well...
because it's called Invasion.
The past few weeks, you had kept telling me you were watching Invasion, and it's no secret that this show has a huge group of people that, playing it lightly, don't think too highly of it.
This is the rare community, the rare audience where there's just a contempt for this show's existence. The silent majority may be people who love it, but they're not the people who are talking about it on the internet. Across the platform, even with critics, I'm lowballing 70% of people who are tuning in hate watch it.
For this season or for both seasons?
For both seasons. Even the first season gets a little bit more love, but as a whole, I think that most people dislike both equally. It's got an insanely high budget, $200 million for the first season. I believe it's around that for the second season as well. They killed off their most popular cast member in the pilot. They showed someone swimming in the vacuum of space. That's when I tuned out. They decided to film season 1 in the dark. And I mean that like every episode felt like they just used no lighting. Spent season 2 zeroed in on the stupidest relationships that you could have, but I think the pinnacle was the love triangle between 3 middle schoolers. They drained their entire soundtrack on one song, which they played incessantly, almost killing David Bowie's Space Oddity.
So Major Tom, okay, yeah.
Yes. And then they explained jack shit about the aliens, which I thought that you might be able to tell just based off the finale.
I am shocked out of all those things that this had $200 million the most, because this did not look like it.
I mean, this is Apple's. This is like its foundation. It's like any of its other spending TV shows.
Apple TV produces Silo, Foundation, For All Mankind, and even things like Severance.
A lot of sci-fi.
Invasion, but this felt so low budget to me. Like, the aliens looked like PS2 monsters.
The aliens have adapted to look worse. In the first season, they actually looked cooler to me because they were just big balls they were like squishy, but they also had these like weird projectile arms that they could throw out there. And then in season 2, because the humans found out that they were susceptible to fire, they adapted halfway through and turned into like Demogorgon, and they called them hunter killers. Like, you could have come up with any name for them, and they called them hunter killers. They refer to them that in this episode too. They also have this really, and this isn't a problem with the show, it was a problem with the timing, rapidly aging children. Mm-hmm. Where in the first season, the kids were actually a little bit more likable. The group of middle schoolers had more of a captivating storyline because their bus crashes and then they're all like kind of stuck down there and you're wondering how they're going to survive during an alien apocalypse. It was unclear at that point that anyone was super duper special. We didn't know about Casper being the chosen one. It was just him, Jamila, Monty, and the rest of the crew. And Monty was straight up just a bully to Casper. He didn't have a crush on Jamila at the time. And they had the arc where he actually turned into sort of he apologized for being a bully. At the end of the first season, he actually meant it. He actually wanted to be friends with Casper, but then this season rolls around, he gets a huge crush on Jamila. He spends the entire time that he meets Casper again, because they go on this search to go find him, because Casper apparently died in the first season, but not really.
Wait, he died?
Yeah, like we watch him die after going into a coma. But obviously he's not dead, but then at the same time he's sort of an alien. That was the big twist here that we got.
Well, he's needed to like open this portal, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, the plot just doesn't seem to move. It doesn't even seem to run in circles. It's not doing the Walking Dead thing where you get one good episode every 5. It also doesn't give you a reason why, because there's this split in the first season that happens where you've got the army that's fighting the aliens, the world army, they've like banded together and it's all over the place. And then you also have this faction of rebels who decide to start fighting the army, but you're not really ever given a reason why you should hate the army. And so it doesn't make it, the resistance is what they're called, but they're resisting what? The fact that they're trying to kill the aliens?
Well, the first half of this, I want to comment on the slow pacing.
Yeah.
The first half of this episode has nothing going on. It just keeps introducing characters. Yeah.
Yeah, so tell me about the characters. We can go through the episode point by point. I think the first people we see it's Mitsuki, right?
Mitsuki and Maya. Yeah.
And Mitsuki is tapping herself into the aliens. What you need to know is that there are some special people that are in the world. A lot of them are kids, But then you also have Mitsuki.
So that explains
who
why we see teenagers later on closing their eyes and like
but
meditating.
But they weren't teens in the first one. They were tweens at oldest. So Mitsuki, though, she lost her love of her life, Hinata, in the first season, who was an astronaut who goes off into space and then gets absorbed by one of the aliens, and her conscience is used to contact Mitsuki through wherever she works at that like NASA version in Japan. Then she's recruited by this ultra rich dude, a la For All Mankind season 3, where she goes to work at a billionaire's place, and the billionaire is the world's only hope. Also reminds me of that one movie, Don't Look Up, where they hire a billionaire to save the planet. And so you have the world president who, get this, so the world is going into apocalypse mode, and they all band together to elect one lady, and she gets
Madam President.
And she gets to make all the decisions, as if that makes sense. That our world
is she a good
would
leader,
be able to.
No, I agree. I agree
president.
that's not realistic. But does she make good decisions?
She relies on whoever is talking to her. If Mitsuki's the last person to talk to her, that's who they're going with. She's just there to give them a sense of like time running out. She's like, we got to do whatever we're about to do right now. But she always greenlights whatever plan it is, unless it's Travante wanting to help. Then she's like, no,
I was
absolutely
gonna say,
not.
Yeah, Casper's thing where he wanted Travante to actually work on the mission. I guess
we'll get there.
Okay, yeah. So going back to Mitsuki,
she's been recruited, and the billionaire died because he went straight up and tried to meet with one of the aliens, or sort of like there's this alien blob that he was holding, and then he just walks right into the place to try to connect with it, and it eats him. Okay, so he's dead, and Mitsuki's in charge of the place now, and she's going crazy because every time that she's connecting with the alien, it's kind of messing with her mind.
Okay, that makes more sense because she says she can feel their language, and I did not like that line.
The more she could, at one point they say that she's getting online with the language too, not just the language but the aliens, that she's online now, and I was just, what is she, the internet? Are the aliens on a 5G plan? Like what's her deal? Yeah.
Mitsuki and Maya though, they're talking about a trip at a jungle that they had.
Yeah,
that's going to come later.
So they're already in the Amazon. They've been in the Amazon the entire time. At one of the episodes, because Maya's supposed to be this other love interest that they tease throughout the season because she's very concerned for Mitsuki, and she's the one who's keeping her grounded, I guess. But she and Mitsuki enjoy like just the slight. Like they walk off together in the jungle for like a second, and then they come back, and that's what she's referring to.
So that's supposed to be that small moment. Okay,
yes.
Yeah, and then we cut to, I guess.
But like the whole point is that Mitsuki is still trying to connect with the aliens. She has less time to do it. Once she can, they discovered in the last few episodes that there's a portal to the mothership, which has just been floating above the earth for a really long time. And the only way to get in there, apparently, is to open that portal and then, like, send people through.
Yeah, and Mitsuki's the only one that can
Mitsuki's the only one who can do it. So she's saying, the only way I can do this is if I hyper-focus. And then Maya's like, well, I'm going to keep you grounded. And then we go to the army base in the middle of the United States.
This was a worse version of Westworld. People are just hooked up to machines. They're basically brain dead. At least that's what I got from it. And then
They're the versions of, like, Mitsuki's who didn't work out. Almost.
Oh, okay. So are they the people
There's
that,
actually a group of them in the Amazon place, too, who have connected with the aliens in some way. They're the abductees who have become... Their brains have been, like, completely taken over by the aliens.
Okay, that makes more sense, at least. And
but not, like, in the way where the aliens are moving for them. Like, with Casper, it seems like he might actually have been controlled by the aliens this entire time. That's not the... These people have always been in that vegetative state.
How long have people known about Project Idabel, though? Because
Idabel?
Rose...
That's where they are.
Idabel,
Yeah. Trev gets there like halfway through the season. He actually breaks down into the center. I think we've seen the last few days where those missing people were, but they've been brought up kind of all season.
Yeah, because Rose was talking about how she promised others that they were going to bring her home or bring them home.
Yeah, so she met her husband, right?
Yeah.
And then immediately Trev is able to be like, you know what? Maybe they are okay here because they've spent all this time trying to break in to get these people out.
And then once they actually get there,
it's like the resistance. Yeah, it's like the resistance where they keep fighting the army, even though the army doesn't seem to be doing anything specifically terrible. They're just kind of bad at executing their thing. Like, they can't fight the aliens, but
they can't fight people. Travante knocks out an army man, like, right away.
An army man?
Yeah,
man. So that happens a lot. They kind of got the stormtrooper thing going on there. And then Trev recognizes Casper's voice from another room, who's talking to the general and, as we talked about, the world president, and he just barges in. Again, the soundproofing it doesn't make sense how he would have heard them, but it doesn't matter.
How long ago did Trev save Casper's life? Because that's the first thing that I said. So
they met each other for like a total of 2 or 3 episodes at the end there, because he makes his way back to England, and then that's where they meet up, and he didn't know Casper. Casper convinces him with his journal, because his journal tells the future.
Yeah, by the way, just talking really fast. So that's Casper's ability. He's able to like draw the future. But that drawing looked like it was made by a 3rd grader. The drawing that he made of Jamila on the moon, that apparently is supposed to tell the future as well.
No, you're being unfair, because again, the aging of the kids, Casper's voice dropped from season 1 to season 2. His drawings are legit. His drawings look exactly as they should for the age that he made them, as well as being like pretty good for that age.
I have to look back at season 1 and see how young these kids were, because here it seemed like they were, like you were saying, just acting too like middle school.
Yeah, well, again, they added a story context where he was competing with Monty for Jamila, and at this point, Monty seems like he's got the win. But it's infuriating, because Monty's storyline, again, went from bully to like, okay, now we're friend. And now it's just this entire stupid hormonal teen angsty storyline that I really dislike. But at some point, Casper has reached out, or the French people have been able to reach out to the world president. He's talking to the army in the U.S., and then Trevante barges in, and he's like, I want to be part of this plan. What is their plan? Can you make it out?
No, I couldn't at all.
So again, they have a portal that they want to establish using their special mind powers that they will then walk into. They'll send some of the army people in there. Casper will go in there too. And then they'll go into the mothership and destroy it from the inside.
How is a show that has practically nothing going on have this convoluted of a plot?
I don't know. That's a great question. That's not a question we can answer. Trev, again, has barged in. The president finally puts her foot down and says, get him out of here. But set him free.
It made that whole scene completely useless, because General Mitchell is there as well.
Gets thrown into jail so many times. So, he goes free, and he's just walking around outside.
Yeah, no, but the president gives him a choice. Yeah. Gives him a choice.
She doesn't know anything about his background, really, besides what the general says in, like, 2 seconds. He's like, this guy broke in. And she's like, well, we can just let him out.
You can either go back to your cell, or you can go home. I wonder which one Trevante's going to choose.
Well, yeah. His season 1 arc was all about him trying to get home, and then he got home, and then he didn't like it. So Monty then talks to Jamila, says, hey, the world needs you. They don't necessarily need Casper. Even look at Casper's old photo. It shows you on a different planet, right? So that's that. And at that point, because he's made that same pitch so many times, we know that she's going to follow it. And because you know that in the end, Casper and Jamila are meant to be together, they probably are waiting like season 3, season 4 if they get it. And then we jump over to everybody's favorite storyline. I'm being sarcastic. The rebel group, the movement. I keep on calling them the Resistance, but they're actually called the Movement. It's led by Clark, and they are really hurting because they've lost so many people once they decided to ditch whatever plan that they had to start helping Anisha. So Anisha is the mom, and she has 2 kids of her own. She has Sarah and she has Luke. And Sarah was taken mid-season by the army, so she's been trying to get them back by breaking into an army base. Because they found her with a shard, and the shard is special too.
Right, the alien shard.
The shard can kill aliens, but they can't make it kill aliens. The only one who can make it kill aliens is Luke, for some reason. But there's this guy who's like seeing this all go down, seeing the destruction that this family is bringing to the movement, how they've lost almost all their colony. And by the way, The Colony is one of the shows I would relate to this, as well as Sense8 and War of the Worlds, but this is probably the worst of all those. So there's this guy in the movement, one dude who's looking at Anisha and saying, this lady's a problem. She's not helping us at all. We've lost so many people. And he's right. He should have left a long time ago. And he just continually gets gaslit by everyone around him who's like, what are you talking about? We have to help Anisha and Sarah and all of them. Luke goes outside because he doesn't want to hear from this guy. and he sees an invisible alien, right?
Yeah, he's able to see what the aliens see, is what I could gauge. And
No.
he says that he gets their visions.
That's true, but like what we see him see is like a portal or an alien that's like camouflaged.
Right.
And most of the aliens that we get are like those big hulking monster things, right? The big dogs. And so he knows that they're about to like enter some shitty zone, and that's when the army pops up. Because at the same time that he is seeing that invisible alien general who was talking to the president is interrogating Anisha, asking her to help him find Luke so that they can work together with the shard and destroy the aliens. And at that point, Anisha's too mad at everything that the general and the army have done, which is just taken Sarah and tried to figure out what's going on with that, to help him.
You would think that if they could like kill these aliens with this shard, as you're saying, that Anisha would be able to put that aside for a second and just be like, yeah, you know what, this is how you use the shard.
Anisha in season 1 wasn't that bad a character, at least at the beginning. The cool thing about the original story was that it didn't seem as if the long-term plot was to have them all join together and then take down the aliens. It felt like they were trying to tell us individual stories of what would happen in case aliens came onto Earth. So it's only this season where it really compounded into let's make them all work together to fight this thing. And it just doesn't work with her. I think it's too big of a storyline. She used to just be a doctor. Now she's tackling the whole world. So I don't blame her logic of getting like overwhelmed, but if you're deciding to concentrate on her perspective for the show, it does make it like, what are we doing? Why are we wasting time with this? She says no, they find Luke anyways, and the plan is set in place that they're going to jump onto the mothership. Casper goes under, right? Like they put him to sleep. The kids are performing a seance. Those are supposed to be the special kids.
That was a seance that they're
No,
performing.
I mean, because she goes into like a yoga pose. She goes to like, and she's meditating, and they all start chanting as if they've been practicing
I couldn't
this.
believe what I was watching at this point.
The problem is this: why make it the only effective way of taking down the monsters be some mental power thing? Like if you can't show people punching or fighting, really. You get one scene like 30 minutes in where they're shooting bullets at the things, which they do even though they know it doesn't work.
That was the 2 minutes that I enjoyed at this show.
Yeah,
we were seeing alien. Well, not only just the action. We were seeing aliens. We were seeing aliens like chopping down people. It was the same in the same vein as something like Sharknado, at least for the first one, where you enjoy seeing just how ridiculous those scenes could get. Well, I was like, yes, we're actually getting the aliens. And then after like having to sit through 30 minutes, and then suddenly it just like all ends at that point.
Well, the speed, the power, the strength, the ability, the vulnerability of the aliens is dependent on whatever is happening in the story. In the first season, it seemed like one of those little guys, not even the built-up dog ones, but one of the original alien things, could take out an entire army. Like it just like zoomed right through. But now it seems like these guys, it takes like 15 of them. I think there were about 15 of those monsters, and they were being held back by the bullets, which don't hurt them.
And Luke was
doing it eventually, and so were the rest of the kids, and so was Mitsuki from wherever she was, and so was Casper from being in his coma state. But like originally, by the time that those kids tuned in, those aliens should have already been able to kill everybody. By the time that we saw the explosion, they should have been able to tear down that entire town by the time that the kids were able to stop them with their mental powers. But how do you show mental powers via TV? All you see is like squinting kids' faces and someone getting a nosebleed. It's kind of like 11 in Stranger Things, but at least with that, like you could tell that she was fighting something. In this, it just feels so weak. It doesn't come across like you see it every episode at this point where they're just like straining.
Even
and there's
seeing
so
it
many
just
close-ups.
once. Even seeing it just once. Yes, the close-ups. I will get to that in a moment. Because
we'll get into our pros and cons, but we got to explain what happens with Luke and the rest of them. Yeah.
It's just that it seemed like even watching this once, it was so unintentionally funny with all of just the nonsense that they were throwing at the screen, hoping something would stick.
Also, when the army finds Luke and they find this group that has been trying to kill them for so long, you'd think that they would have been like a little bit angrier. But instead, they immediately put Luke in charge. Luke walks through the town like he's the king of all men, and that's when Anisha's like, bring me there. I want to speak to my son. And they do. They bring her there. And that's when the aliens show up. Everything goes down. You've got the portal. but it's unstable. They try to send a few army dudes into there, and they immediately get blown back.
They also sent astronauts that showed up out of nowhere, right?
Those aren't astronauts. Those are army dudes, and they got blown up. They just thrown backwards. The
portal looked like it was something that they found on the internet, downloaded, and then just put on the screen.
It's like a jelly thing.
It didn't look realistic at all.
I mean, I've had no problem with the sci-fi looking thing. Like, I think that's where the budget went. I think even in the first season, there were some pretty cool looking things. I think if you take images out, you wouldn't be able to tell that the show is as bad as it is. Mitsuki is having a real hard time keeping this portal open or whatever that she's doing, keeping it stable. She has to tell Maya, you know what? I'm throwing away all my humanity at this point. I'm getting rid of our memories together, even though that's just been teased, but we've never really even seen them, I don't think, kiss. And then she faints, but she's able to do whatever she needs to do. The portal is stable. Trev, who has just wandered in, he's given the most important piece of the kryptonite from one of the generals. That
the thing
shard,
that will save them all.
And he runs on into that portal goo, and suddenly he's in that maze, right?
Okay,
Did we jump over something?
No. So the last 5 minutes of this, when he's in the maze, I actually did like.
The final 10 minutes was when Trevante went in, and then Mitsuki fainted, and that was when they were like, she's on the same frequency, she's online. The gibberish.
Well, yeah, but I was talking more about when Trevante was inside, because that set actually looked like it was high budget. It looked like it was a video game.
It was a walking, glowing maze.
Yes.
And he was using the shard to sort of break it down, because you could see, like, if that's the mind of the alien, then you've got those mental neurons, and he's like, that's able to kill it. Trevante meets with Casper in there, but Casper is down on Earth still. Trevante, that's his actual body. Casper is just using some sort of projection, and so we know that his spirit is literally there.
Yes, and he's also he's evil in some way, right? Because they talk, and then his eyes turn a different color.
The assumption is either Casper has been controlled all season, like since he came back from the dead, and so that's why he hasn't remembered everything that Jamila has been talking about, and that their relationship was suffering because of that. But it also could be that once Jamila said, I'm not going in with you, that's when Casper was just like, you know what, I'm going to lose my humanity too. And then that's when the alien was allowed to take over. But clearly, he's not the one completely in charge. I do think he has his essence part of him. Like, there's going to be a moment where Trevante is able to appeal to his better conscience, and he'll wake up. But yeah, not really any answers, because that's where it ends. They just look at the tower of where they need to go, and we don't know what that means, and then the show is done.
I thought that when it cut to credits and they were playing Space Oddity, I found it funny that they used the cover. They couldn't get the actual song.
Oh, no, it's because they played the actual song so many times.
Wait, so you're saying that they've played the actual song
almost
and then they decided to use the cover to end the season?
Because if you've heard it so many times, then the cover's the only way to go.
I'm saying you should have gone the opposite way around. Use the cover, then use the actual song.
No, you want to hear a cover of Space Oddity about 10 times? They use that as their gripping piece of music. Like, think of all the times Sons of Anarchy went to a sad song. Whenever they go to a sad song, it's always one song, and it's always that song. Because Mitsuki and Hinata love that song. That's why.
Okay, so that's the reason why they decided to use it.
Yes.
Okay, it's clear that from the music and the way that this is shot, the show is trying to be something emotional and gripping. However, this is a prime example that just because you have those ambitions, it doesn't mean that's going to work.
It's so vague, it's so trite, it's so pointless. The only way that they fight their aliens is their mind, and the only people who are able to do it end up in a coma, in a vegetative state, or taken over by the aliens themselves, or hallucinating and paranoid-stricken. I think they even showed Mitsuki looked like she was dead at the end, but she probably isn't. But my point is,
it looked like there was a blood spot.
If you have to give the audience some means to root for someone. You can't root for the movement. You can't root because they're just dumb. You can't root for the army because they're incapable of doing anything right. You can't root for the main characters because it doesn't seem like any of them know what's going on. You have to root for Casper, but guess what? Casper isn't working for you anymore. So there's no one to really hone onto, you know?
It also just seemed amateur. We talked about the close-ups earlier. Mitsuki and Maya. There was so many shots of their face and
Super
then
close-ups.
Singular tears coming out of them.
Well, yes, tears do come out in singles. When they show okay, never mind. Hour-long dramas, there's always going to be that staring wistfully thing that characters do, that pass the camera. But this has so much of that. It has people looking at each other and saying, "What's happening?" Literally
all the time,
in the dialogue,
every single scene.
Are you doing this? That's been asked.
The line that
all
I
the
remember
time.
that being said was to Lucas, and I was like, "Don't they know how this is happening?"
It happens to Luke. It happens to Casper. People are constantly looking at each other and being like, "Are you the one doing this? Am I the one doing this?" Like they don't know. And then you get the super close-ups, but mostly the super close-ups are reserved for Mitsuki. They love to super close up on her eyeballs. Mm-hmm. I don't know why.
That's what I was talking about earlier. And then it also seemed like Casper, I know that they gave him some scenes in this, but all the teens even, they really had no place in this finale. It didn't seem like they played really that an impactful of a story, except for Casper from the final 5 minutes.
The interesting thing about the show, though, is it was never good to the point where I was enjoying the fact that it was so bad too, so I do understand why people hate watch it. It's not so bad that it's good. I'm not recommending it to anybody in that way. It's just more like people have made the assessment that this may be Apple's version of seeing, you know how with Marvel, also called Invasion in a way, Secret Invasion, they used AI for the intro?
Yes.
People are making the assumption that they used AI for the entire script. That they use ChatGPT for the entire script. Or that this is an entire write-off for Apple and that they're just looking for a way to make money.
For a show called Invasion, especially a finale.
It's the second show called Invasion.
There was very little aliens and there was very little actual invasion even going on.
I mean, that's an argument that people have been making since the first episode. The second show that's called Invasion, because there was one in 2005, 2006 starring William Fichtner and Evan Peters. Actually, had a 7.5 on ABC. Got canceled after one season. They suspect part of the reason was because of the time slot it was in, because it was coming in after Lost. But if it's 2023 and you're you're looking at a show that came out so long ago that's actually better than you, that's a problem. This I would say is probably the second worst Apple show after For All Mankind, because I loved the first 2 seasons of that. It took such a dive. That's one of those instances of how far you've fallen versus this, where it's you've always sort of been on the same level. If I had to give the show some props, do you have any pros for this?
I said the final 5 minutes. That's really all I have.
Yeah, I would say that, okay, having seen 2 seasons worth of it, everybody agrees that the intro song is a banger. Everybody loves that intro. It was written by Max Richter, the composer. When you listen to it, it sounds really cool. And then if I had to recommend one part of the show, I would say season 1, episode 6. It's kind of a ripoff of A Quiet Place, but I enjoyed that episode. Not everybody does, but I at that point thought, did this show finally find its own? Mm-hmm. And then it immediately ditched everything that it did in that episode. That was a survival episode, and it concentrated on one storyline, and it did something completely different than what the rest of the series does. Although it is very dark. The lighting is very bad in that episode. 6.2 on IMDb, 53 on Metacritic, 58% of that is mixed.
I tried my hardest to understand what was going on with this show, but by the time that they had people entering the portals and them being thrown up 15 meters in the air, and they were talking about Xylon Queens, it just seemed like they were coming up with...
Xylon Queens?
Yeah, they don't you remember the teens were talking about something about Xylon Queens?
Oh, you're talking about what Monty and...
Yes.
So again, that's just Casper and his,
I gave up on this show. I giving it a 3 out of 10.
I agree with you. The true thing that I realized a long time ago is that nothing has happened to the point where if you gave me a Star Wars crawl that said aliens invaded Earth, after much death and destruction, one U.S. soldier and one special child that can mind meld with aliens make their way to a brainstem of the mothership, here's where we are. That's all we need to say to get us to this point. When I started watching season 2, I was like, maybe I can just say skip the first season, jump right into this one. And that would have been really handy if season 2 was great. But it's not. So you can skip the first 2 seasons, maybe tune into season 3, which is actually likely to happen. It doesn't seem like there's any... it seems like the show creators, Simon Kinberg and David Weil, seem prepped
David
to
Weil.
go.
Where have I heard that name?
Well,
before?
Solos.
Okay.
The Twilight Zone, Hunter, the newer one, Hunter's Citadel.
Citadel, okay, that's
Yes.
where, yeah.
He did all this. So I'm not surprised that he was put in charge of this, as well as Simon Kinberg, who wrote the screenplay for X-Men Days of Future Past. Also Jumper, also wrote Dark Phoenix and Fantastic Four, the newer one. So, like, he's had his ups and downs.
Well, that makes more sense because Lucas's, like, power reminded me of Xavier's from Logan. If you remember, like, Xavier would freak out a lot of the times and it would, like, stop time. And, and that was kind of what Lucas's powers did. However, Lucas had more control.
The mental powers are so... Like, if everybody has mental powers and no one has superpowers... It's really hard on I would not go into a project doing that. And so I don't know, when given all the freedom that they had, why they chose to do it that way. Even if they only made it so that they had one special person. But instead now you have a mix of like a ton of them. And I don't even think Mitsuki got her abilities organically. I think that she got hers because of her connection with Hanada. But it seems like Simon Kinberg and David Weil are so proud of themselves right now. They really, really like the show that they put together. So I do find it funny that we're kind of trashing it. But if they get another season, I mean, who cares? Yeah.
I usually do give comparisons for a show like you did earlier, but I think that this is in like a league of its own.
Sense8, definitely, because so many shows like to do that thing where it's like people exist in different countries and are connected somehow.
Yes.
That's exactly what this is. Somehow. These kids and Mitsuki and Trev, they all linked up in the end, and it's fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, but it's going to work to help them kill the aliens. At first, I didn't know if the aliens were good or bad. It's pretty clear that they're not great for society.
Yep.
There's a fan theory going about that there's actually two sets of aliens out there right now, kind of like Expanse, where one is good and one is bad, and the one that we're dealing with, it doesn't matter. Sorry. You know, I was trying not to get too far into the lore with this review, but it's really hard when the whole surface level thing is just so simple. It's just, these aliens have come onto Earth and we're having a real difficult time trying to kill them. That's it. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.